The concept of monkey see, monkey do is one that refers to the learning of a process without understanding how it works. In other words, mimicking an act with a limited understanding of the consequence. Scientists use the concept of monkey see, monkey do to understand the foundations of aggression in human behavior. Is it biologically programmed because under certain circumstances it has been an evolutionary survival mechanism? Do situational factors such as repeated frustration or provocation bring forth aggression? Or is it learned by what we see? Social psychologists have been at the forefront of aggression research. They focus on all types of human interaction. One goal of social psychologists has been to define aggression. What is aggression? It may seem relatively easy to figure out a definition. However, such an explanation turns out to be hard to pin down. What would you define as aggression? A boxing match? Or is a cat killing a bird aggression? Is a soldier shooting the enemy aggression? Or is sibling rivalry aggression? Many researchers have gone beyond trying to agree on a definition of aggression and tried examining the sources of human aggression. The social learning theory suggests that behavior can be developed through observing and imitating other behavior. One of the most famous experiments regarding this idea was conducted by Albert Bandura and his associates Dorothea Ross and Sheila Ross. Bandura founded the social learning theory and demonstrated how children can learn aggression. Bandura, Ross, and Ross were able to demonstrate this modeling effect for acts of aggression. The research has come to be known throughout the field of psychology as the bobo doll study. The researchers proposed to expose children to adult models who behaved in either aggressive or non-aggressive ways. The children would then be tested in a new situation without the model present to determine to what extent they would imitate the acts of aggression they had observed in the adult. Bandura and his associates offered 4 predictions. Children who observed adult models performing acts of aggression would imitate the adults and engage in similar aggression behaviors, even if the model was no longer present. Furthermore, this behavior would differ significantly from those children who observed non-aggressive models or no models at all. Children who were exposed to the non-aggressive models would not only be less aggressive than those who observed the aggression, but also significantly less aggressive than a control group of children who were exposed to no model at all. In other words, the non-aggressive models would have an aggression-inhibiting effect. Because children tend to identify with parents and other adults of their same sex, participants would imitate the behavior of the same-sex model to a greater degree than a model of the opposite sex. Since aggression is a highly masculine type behavior in society, boys should be more predisposed than girls toward imitating aggression, the difference being most marked for subjects exposed to the male model. There were a total of 36 boys and 36 girls ranging in age from 3 to almost 6 years old. The control group consisting of 24 children would not be exposed to any models. The remaining 48 children were divided into 2 groups, 24 exposed to non-aggressive models and 24 exposed to aggressive models. Each group was further divided in half so that 12 were exposed to opposite-sex models and the other 12 were exposed to same-sex models. There were a total of 8 groups. Each child was exposed individually to the various experimental procedures. First, the experimenter brought the child to the playroom. On the way, they encountered the adult model who was invited by the experimenter to come and join the game. The child was seated in one corner of the playroom at the table containing highly interesting activities. Next, the adult model was taken to a table in a different corner containing a mallet and an inflated 5-foot-tall bobo doll. The experimenter explained that these toys were for the model to play with and then left the room. For both the aggressive and non-aggressive conditions, the model began assembling the Tinker toys. However, in the aggressive condition, after a minute, the model attacked the bobo doll with violence. For all the children in the aggressive condition, the sequence of aggressive acts performed by the model was identical. The experimenter came back into the room, said goodbye to the model, and took the child to another game room. Following the 10-minute play period, all children from various conditions were taken to another room that contained very attractive toys. The researchers believe that in order to test for aggressive responses, the child should be somewhat angered or frustrated. To accomplish this, they allowed them to begin playing with the attractive toys, but then after a short time told them that the toys in this room were reserved for other children. They also told the children, however, that they could play with some other toys in the next room. All the acts that imitated the physical aggression of the model were recorded. These included sitting on the bobo doll, punching it in the nose, hitting it with the mallet, kicking it, and throwing it into the air. The children exposed to violent models tended to imitate the exact violent behaviors they observed. When there was a male model, the total number of aggressive behaviors by the boys was 104, and when there was a female model, the total number was 48.4. Overall, there were 128 committed acts by the girls and 270 committed acts by the boys. Bandura learned that specific behaviors, in this case violent ones, could be learned through the process of observation and imitation without any reinforcement provided to either the models or the observers. Critics of Bandura's research on aggression have pointed out that aggressing toward an inflated doll is not the same as attacking another person, and children know the difference. This experiment demonstrated dramatically how children can acquire new behaviors simply by observing adults, even when adults are not physically present. This researcher formed the foundation for studies on the effects of children viewing violence in person or in the media. Congress held new hearing on the media violence, focusing on potential negative effects of children exposure to violence on TV, movies, video games, computer games, and the internet. Broadcasters and multimedia developers, feeling increased pressure to respond to public and legislative attacks, are working to reduce media violence or put in place parental advisory systems warning of particularly violent content.